2, 1. Good morning, everyone. This is Diego Antolini from the Explain Group. I'm here today with Joshua Shapiro from the United States of America. Hi, Joshua. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful.
Very good.
Excellent.
Joshua is, beside being a new entry into the X Gates project powered by the Explain Group, he's a very experienced senior paranormal researcher and above all, the crystal skulls experts. And on this topic today, we're going to cover an outstanding interview with Joshua. We have a few very interesting questions and we would like to ask him. Don't forget that he's going to write a lot for the X Gates, so you can find his articles on our platforms as well as on his own channels. That maybe the end of the interview is going to give you some indication on how you can find him, and social media and everything else. Follow Joshua because his research is extremely important, especially now. He will explain you why during the interview. But okay, let me stop here. Joshua, you want to just very briefly speak about yourself, make an introduction, then let's go with the questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Diego. I see myself not so much as an expert, but an explorer. So I would say I'm a crystal skull and paranormal explorer. Explorer means that when I find interesting things, then I try to figure out the best way to share them, whether do a video, write an ebook, do online presentation. What my main concern is right now is to share the best information to help people to understand the total, complete, absolute transformation our planet is going into right now, and we are going into paradise. I've had two powerful experiences, which are shared in one of the 6 free ebooks that will be available to you, which I will talk about how you can get them at the end, that shows me absolutely without question, we are headed for world peace in an unbelievable world. And I just watched a video from another person talking about how the US election is going to be overturned very soon. And that will be one sign for all of you to see that the world will be changing soon. So I'm ready for your questions, Diego. Hit me as a typical Aries. I love the most difficult questions you can ask me.
Awesome, Joshua. Here it is, right to the core. What are the crystal skulls?
Well, as the crystal skull term implies, we're talking about a skull. I have one here just to show, so we have an example. This isn't from quartz crystal. It's a blue gemstone, which at 67 years of age, I can't remember the name of it. Lapis lazuli, there we go. Spirit helped me. I heard telepathically what it is. So we're talking about a skull. Crystal skulls started as quartz skulls, but now it's any type of gemstone that is made in the shape of a skull face. In other words, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. It could be alien. It could be almost an exact duplicate of a human bone skull, but any type of skull face like this that's done in gemstone is a crystal skull. There are 4 different types of crystal skulls that are defined within the crystal skull community. That is the ones being made now, the modern ones, which we call contemporary, ancient ones, which are the ones that most people are the most interested in, that could be anywhere from 1,000, 2,000, 500,000, 1,000,000 years old, made in the past. Usually these ancient skulls have very high energy. We have old skulls that would be ones made between 100 years ago and I'd say 1,000, probably more this shape, a little more primitive compared to our own bone skull. And then we also have what are called apported crystal skulls, which means they come from nothing, like through a medium. I've actually sat with a medium and a crystal skull came out through his mouth, an energy vortex in his mouth, along with other pieces. So those are the 4 different types. So this is what a very fast definition would be about crystal skulls.
Excellent. And so what is their power or powers?
Well, what I would say, it's not so much power, but the force field or energies that are around them. That's how I would classify it. So the reason why I think that we have these energy fields which affect human beings is because, in my experience, when a crystal skull becomes activated, when it is brought to life, there seems to be an intelligent consciousness that is connected to it. And this consciousness is, I believe, what the source of the energy or these fields that are around it, which could be helping people develop their spiritual gifts. It could be for healing. A lot of times when I'm writing my creativity, I'll have a crystal skull around and it'll create an energy field that's conducive to help me with my creativity. So I've always seen the crystal skulls as a tool that was given to humanity a long time ago to help us to become the best that we can be, but essentially to also help us to connect with our spiritual essence. So that to me is the greatest gift. That's what this energy does the most. It helps to awaken people. So it's a really powerful tool that people can use who are, let's say, like on a spiritual path, which I assume most of the people that are drawn to your website and to your videos, they're all on their own spiritual path. This is a powerful tool. So it's the energies that are contained, and these energies are different for every skull. It's not the same energy from one skull to another. It's unique. And I think a lot of times that what happens is when a person is going to get their own personal skull, this consciousness that's connected to that skull knows who's going to receive it and will set up the vibrational frequencies that the skull emanates, specific for that individual or person.
Very interesting. And since you mentioned about different categories of skulls, and let's go a little bit to the past. How were the crystal skulls utilized by past civilizations?
Okay, well, this comes from soul memory. So in other words, I cannot prove this, but there are many people who will agree with me who are connected to skulls. So let's take an example of Atlantis. And by the way, Atlantis may not have existed 12 or 13,000 years ago. I have some people who think that it existed like 2,000 years ago. So we will be finding out, I think, a lot more in the future about the true history of our world. But for now, let's just use Atlantis as an example, because I have soul memories of being like a priest or, being a priest in these Atlantean healing centers. And I think that each Atlantean healing center had a crystal skull that they worked with, like there may have been 13 of such centers. So the people in the past who really understood and worked with the crystal skull understood that it is an object that works with different frequencies of energy, and that it could be used, like, for each person may have a different challenge or situation. So they would come into the healing center and they would use a certain crystal skull that helped with those specific problems or challenges that the person had. So I think that the crystal skulls primarily were used for healing, or used to help, like young children. I have memory of special rooms where young children would come in where they had crystal skulls, and it would help them with their spiritual gifts and their creative gifts and to develop their abilities. But also another thing that I'm hearing, which I think is very true, is that the crystal skulls could be a physical object that was helping people to connect with source, with creator. Because if you're a person on a spiritual path, you understand that everything that exists is an aspect of creator. We're all connected. We're all part of this one being. So I think that the crystal skulls were one of the tools used by Atlantis or Lemuria, where it was helping even young children to connect with the divine essence of who they are. So as they got older and they went further into life, that, they would know who they are and what they were here to do. So these are just off the top of my head, since we have a limited amount of time, examples of how I think, like in the case of Atlantis, that they worked with the skulls. They honored them and they used them as a tool to help them to become closer to their divine self, which is what we need to start doing now, and what a lot of people are doing actually now. They're using it as a tool to develop their spirituality and their gifts.
Okay, now let's go with a thought-provoking question. There are some in various aspects of society who claim to be these skulls to be false artifacts. So what would you say to them? Like if you have someone saying, oh no, those skulls are totally hoax? What would you say?
Well, usually in most cases where somebody challenges this, they've never had a direct experience themselves with a crystal skull, or they possibly could have had an experience with a crystal skull where it wasn't a positive experience, because I've met some crystal skulls in Mexico where the energies that they contain were man's inhumanity to man, like they may have been used in sacrifice or whatever. And the possible reason for this is because the crystal skulls, not the original ones that were made long ago, I believe, but, you know, they saw these skulls and they said, oh, these are power objects, we'll make our own, but they didn't make them in the proper way. They didn't honor them. So they started to pick up man's inhumanity to man, because in general, a stone does not differentiate what's positive or negative. It's just recording the frequencies of energies around it. So if you had a crystal skull, obviously that was used in a sacrifice of some kind, which they say the Mayans and Aztec later on in their culture, they did these things, it's going to pick up that negative frequency. So the key for me is a person who doubts that there could be something with a crystal skull, I would first ask him, have you actually had an experience? Which crystal skull? Like if you worked with the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, which is the most famous one, and the one that's affected me in the most powerful way that I've ever seen, you know, go in the presence of something like that and see what happens. But we need to understand that right now what's happening, and this is very clear, all of humanity is polarized right now, right? Because we have so much, let's call it negative activities happening in what we've been taught in education. And now we're finding out that we've been lied to, and that there exists the possibility that everything we were taught, no matter what it is, may have been a lie to perpetuate a certain reality that has been controlled by a small group of people. So it's the same situation with the crystal skulls. There's going to be people who, like I remember there's one lady we worked with in the Boston area, she could not look at the skull face because it reminded her of a bone skull. It reminded her of death. So she just couldn't handle it. So we would turn it around to the back part, and then she got this healing from it. So it wasn't the shape of it, it was the stone that was creating the energy. So all I can say to the people who have doubts is there are so many people who have had a positive experience around a crystal skull which has been activated, which is being used for healing to help humanity, that, you know, there's no way that we can convince them unless they have their own experience. I mean, I could talk about, and we don't have time to do it today, but I've had so many experiences, and this is what I'm going to be writing about in X Gates. Like the next experience I'll be writing about crystal skull is going to blow people's mind. The test that we did with one of our skulls in Belgium, and the results they came up with are mind-boggling. So, you know, there's no way I can convince somebody who doesn't believe. So I think the key is try to have an experience with one and see what happens to you, and make sure that it's a skull that's being used in a positive way. Okay, because if it's a skull that's picked up man's inhumanity to man, obviously they may have an experience and it may not be a pleasant one, because the skulls don't decide what energy they're going to record. They're just picking up what's around them. So that's the easiest way I can answer your question.
Okay, and you actually gave me the hint for the next question that takes us to the war peace. How do you think, or how do you know, will crystal skulls help create world peace?
Well, a personal experience I had, the first crystal skull that I actually met, which is called a me, it's an amethyst crystal skull. And I was just looking at pictures of this crystal skull. This was back in 1983. And I started to receive a telepathic communication through the image, because I believe any facsimile of one of these activated skulls can link into the real skull and start sharing with you either the vibrational frequency or the intelligence that's working through it. And through this picture I saw of a me said, we, meaning all the crystal skulls, the older ones, where we're turning to the earth, we're coming out more publicly, and we're going to help humanity to create world peace. So for me, this was my first personal experience where I got a message from one of the actual skulls that exist telling me that they're starting to come out in large numbers because this is their purpose, to help humanity to create peace. And as a result of that, another thing that we have done is I've set up and I've worked with different groups of people where we've had world peace meditations where we're meditating with the crystal skulls. We're basically doing a similar meditation. Usually what we do is we don't do it all at the same time because we have different time zones all over the world, but we do it at the same time in each time zone so that there's a wave of meditations that's happening all over the planet. And when you talk to the people who have participated in the world peace meditations, many of them will tell you they had fantastic visions. They saw great things happening to our world. They felt amazing energies coming through, from by holding their skull. So to me, what happens is when you, even if you just work with quartz crystal, it amplifies the thought, the mind, the energy, the purpose that you're doing for your meditation. And so this is the reason why we chose the crystal skulls, is because they're amplifying our vision for world peace. So this is one of the ways that I've been guided to work with the crystal skulls for world peace. Plus also, if they're a healing tool, how does world peace come to our world? We need to have everyone be in a peaceful state. Or the 100th monkey effect, if you ever read that book by Ken Keyes, when a certain amount of people reach the clear understanding of how to live together peacefully and be spiritual, the entire humanity all of a sudden switches and becomes this. So in a way, our world peace meditation is an effort. And we've done over 100 of these meditations over the past, 15 years or whatever, to try to help to raise the frequency of the planet. Raising the frequency of the planet is also how you see world peace. So just some ideas related to that question. I hope what I'm saying makes sense, because I'm being very spontaneous and trying to be fast.
It does make sense a lot, and also it stirs some curiosity. I'm sure that everybody who listens to you want to know more, and as you said, today we don't have that much time to cover this. It's a huge topic, but we're going to touch some little bit here and there, and obviously we're going to have more interviews together, so no worries about that. But now you gave me an image of this crystal skulls coming to you and said we're coming even in larger numbers because we want to help humanity. And this sounds like some advanced technology, and I'm thinking about some alien civilization sharing the same message. So here's the question for you, Joshua. Is there any connection between the crystal skulls and UFOs or alien beings or any otherworldly creature?
Yes, absolutely. There is a tremendous connection. How we know this is one of the phenomena that happens with crystal skulls is when you activate them, if they're an activated skull or a very old skull or ancient skull, they start showing you holographic images. So like, for example, when my co-authors Nasserino and Bowen went to Canada, where the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull was at that time, and this is back in the late 80s, they were using color, light, and sound, and they were seeing holographic images inside of the skull, which was showing them extraterrestrial and flying saucers. Now, that does not necessarily mean that they came from there, but that they were recording this activity around them. Also, when you work with spiritual mediums or people who are very psychic, they start to pick up on the essence of especially the older skulls. And a lot of them also will start saying, hey, I see that the crystal skulls were gifts from the gods. Actually, the Mayans say that, but who are the gods? The gods are the galactic beings who love humanity, who say, what kind of tools can we give to humanity to help them to grow spiritually? So if we give them a crystal skull, which if it's a very well done skull that especially looks like our human bone skull, then that type of crystal skull could be quite powerful in activating and awakening the spirituality and divine essence inside of us. So it becomes a tool gifted by various galactics. Then we also have some crystal skulls, like there's one called the ET, which I've actually slept with and worked with, which doesn't look like a human skull. It looks like an extraterrestrial skull. And we're not totally sure who made this, where did it come from, etc. So these clues show us, and again, from soul memory, I have memories of galactic beings gifting to humanity these skulls to help us to live in peace and harmony and so on as a tool, especially if they're computers, okay, which is what I believe. I believe that in the future, or we may already have this technology gifted by the galactics, which call them the elite or whatever you want to call the people in charge, have not allowed this technology to come out. I have seen in my mind's eye that there is a technology that either we have or will have, where we'll be able to connect to a crystal skull, and all of a sudden you'll start seeing images and people talking to you and great knowledge and information. So I think that they're also a form of computer that the galactics gave us, encoding inside of them when we're ready, when we're at a certain level of evolution, that we can pick out this information. So this is another thing that I'm expecting is going to happen. And I expect that this will be one of the projects of the new center I'm working on, called the Center for the Advancement of Humanity, which also your group is going to be helping and working with us on this as well. So I see this as a major project. Who knows what kind of information we're going to be able to bring out of the crystal skulls that they've been holding for thousands of years. So
Right. And speaking of energy, you said the crystal skulls are also a source of potentially unlimited energy. And I remember there was a civilization in the past that has been wiped out of the humanity's memory, but that it's very much present in the minds of researchers like you. And that's called Tartaria, or the Great Tartaria. What can you tell us about this civilization, this culture?
okay, this is a new field that I've just recently started to look at. And actually, my wife, Katrina, she brought up Tartary. She heard it from a friend a few years ago, but I didn't know what to do with it. But then I saw this video by a gentleman named Iwar Anand, who mostly, I think, on Telegram, although I think his videos are on YouTube as well. And he is the one that convinced me that Tartaria, or an advanced civilization, existed not so long ago, like 200 some years ago. Now, what proof did he show that convinced me this is true? Well, if we look at the Taj Mahal, let's take that as an example, and we listen to the history that the so-called experts tell us, saying it was built in the 1600s, it was built by a king and for a queen. The people in that period of time did not possess the advanced technology to build such a sophisticated building like this. I mean, if you go inside, there's geometric structures on the inside that are so intricately done, it would probably require like a laser beam or some type of advanced technology, which we might not even have today, okay, in order to do this. And there's many other buildings which have been claimed to be churches and cathedrals and such, and government buildings that are similar to this, very advanced. And when they give you the history, or I'm thinking of the Arc of Triumph in Paris too, it looks like an electromagnet, a huge electromagnet. And if you look at all the buildings around it, it looks like a circuit board. So what Iwar Anar was talking about is that these advanced buildings that still exist today was part of a free energy system which Tartaria had. They totally understood how to work with all the energy fields on the earth, the electromagnetic field, the ether that exists here, and so on. And they had a totally free energy system, which, by the way, I know for a fact this is going to come back. Everything is going to be based, either we're going to recreate the system they had or some other system, but we're going to see totally free energy again. Another clue to Tartaria is, why are there so many buildings where one of the floors, the window is half in the ground and half above? This doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone make a building like this? And the experts on Tartaria say that they believe Tartaria was destroyed by some kind of catastrophe where there was a flood, like Noah's flood of the entire planet, and that there was all this mud that was left over, and that there are actually pictures from the 1800s where we see these buildings covered by mud that are being dug out. Another phenomenon are buildings called star forts, okay, which is like a five-pointed star, very advanced type structure. Again, impossible that at the time frame, like 14, 15, 1600, whatever they're talking about, that we had a technology to be able to build something like this. Another strange thing is here in the United States, and unfortunately, I can't find this article. I saw it one time on Telegram, an article printed in a large American newspaper, 1852, talking about ruins in the United States, huge cities of ruins, like out west that we hadn't explored before. Or let's look at the Chicago World's Fair of 1893, which I just shared in a talk. I was listening to what they were doing to describe it. 200 buildings they created within 2 or 3 years, very advanced, which look Arabian-like in their format. Why not an American format to the structures? They have these weird formats, very advanced buildings. President Grover Cleveland visited this display, this fair, and hits one button and electricity lights up all 200 buildings at one time. We were not that advanced in 1893 with electricity to do. I don't care if Tesla was there or not, but they couldn't do this. And then why did they destroy all of them but 3 of them? I was born in Chicago, and I've been in the 3 buildings that are left: the Field Museum, Museum of Science and Industry, and the Art Museum. Okay, and I think Soldiers Field, where they play professional football, may be another one. It's a strange structure. Why would they destroy all those buildings? Why were there 2 major fires in Chicago in 1871 and 1874? Okay, so in other words, there were a lot more of these kind of buildings that existed, that all of a sudden they started creating wars or fake earthquakes or fires to get rid of them, because they didn't want people to understand that there was a very advanced race of people that existed before. Also, a lot of these buildings have very tall doors. That would imply that possibly the Tartarians were very tall. If you look at photographs in the late 1800s and early 1900s, there actually are people who are very tall, like 11 feet, 12 feet tall. They are probably the people who, were left over, or whoever did this great destruction tried to change the DNA of humanity so that we were not so tall. Okay, but maybe there were some people they could not change their DNA, and there were born very tall people. Also, there were a lot of orphans that are talked about in the 1800s. Why is that? According to Iwa Arnar, he shows pictures in his video of major large cities in Europe, including in Italy and in Russia and in Germany and in Denmark, where there's a large city, but there's no people there. Nobody's there. That's impossible, because all these cities should have hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people. So I believe that this big deal with the orphans was because they needed to re-educate the children to their new history and then repopulate the cities all over the world. So these are just some of the clues we have. And there are also, the last thing I recall is there are some maps, like in Encyclopedia Britannica 1771, I saw a map where they're showing Tartaria, where Russia is. So how can all of these situations be going on, if there wasn't some kind of civilization or people that existed that were living during this time? So Tartaria suggests that everything that we have been taught, the history of our world, and even the nature of our world, has not been taught to us properly. So, that'll be a future conversation if you ever decide to speak about what flat Earth is about, because I have become a believer in that as well. And that's also Iwa Arnar in this video gave evidence, and then he made another one, 8 hours, talking about it as well. And I think there's a lot of proof for that as well. So Tartaria is important for us to be aware of. They had great knowledge. They were a very peaceful people. And I believe we're going to go back to how the world was as it was in Tartaria. But it was only 200 some years ago. That's what's the most unbelievable.
Yes, and folks understand that basically the two main branches of research that Shapiro and the Explain group together are going to work on with this series of interviews and articles are the crystal skulls and Great Tartaria or Tartaria. Today, Joshua gave us a lot of insights, especially about the skulls, because that was the primary topic of this conversation, but it also introduced the Tartaria, which I believe holds a great deep connection with the skulls. But this is something that we're going to discuss later on. And now we're running out of time, so unfortunately we need to say bye to Joshua for now. Joshua, thank you so much for your time, and at the end of the interview, when we publish it, we're going to place all your contact information, how to reach you, how to find your ebooks and everything. So when you guys see the video, don't forget to read the description. You will find all the information there, and especially how to contact Joshua if you want to talk to him personally. Joshua, thank you so much. And we will see you later on the next interview and your articles for the X Gates.
Thank you so much, Diego. A
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be here with you.
You take care.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye.